Hi, and welcome to Comics from the Ark for the week of March 26th. Devin and Jeff here to discuss our reads for this week. Devin, what did you read this week?
I went back to it's actually a few weeks ago, but the way that they come in with the 2000 AD programs is you get like a package for a month at a time, and it's the previous month and so forth. So anyway, I grabbed one of those, reading into the Judge Dredd stuff. They've got them outside the walls of Mega City 1. In this, it was a really, I mean, and it's not just the Dread story. I mean, that's just the one I key in on. There's a total of 4 stories in it, I believe. And they're all really very well done. It's just the Dread one stood out, especially in this one, because normally, you have kind of an equal feel across the stories. This one, the Judge Dredd story, actually had more of a, weirdly enough, almost an uplifting ending to for lack of a better way of putting it, because basically he's outside Mega City 1 and patrolling, and there's another judge that has gone through, and then as soon as that judge goes through, this gang of bandits comes down, and it's kind of like a Wild West City type scenario. They come down in to raise all kinds of havoc, steal the money, end up killing one of the store clerks, stuff like that. And that's when Dredd basically comes rolling up, takes them out, and the other judge shows back up, and that's when he pulls a gun on them. And, it's kind of confusing at first. It's like, what the hell? Well, it ends up being an impersonator judge, and they were just, and basically they made the comment, I did what I had to do to try to help the community, because the sight of a judge will help keep the order, and I guess they were using a judge that had passed, like the uniform that they'd found or something along those lines. Same thing with the bike and stuff. And before Dredd takes off at the end of it, without basically saying hardly anything, he rips the badge off of her, and you see her at the very end just holding in her hand, and over the place where it had the name, he had scrawled deputy over the top of it. So, like I said, it was kind of, it was still a very somber storyline, but it had kind of a weird uplifting ending. So,
Well, I think that they've done similar with Batman as well. The whole, Gotham is more psychotic when Batman isn't there, and by having someone impersonating the Bat,
yeah.
it was during No Man's Land, actually. Batgirl came about during that time, and
Yeah.
she became part of the Bat family after all of that.
Well, and they realized it after Batman's back was broken when Azrael took over.
Right.
Because they knew that it had to be in existence. And weirdly enough, this one isn't just a single person. It just has to be
Part of this group.
Well, yeah, the idea, just there has to be a judge that is overseeing the area to instill the proper fear. And where Dredd definitely came in and, did summary executions pretty much across the board on this gang, so now this judge who was kind of impersonating, who's now been basically,
Legitimized?
field deputized by Dredd, is, has even more legitimacy, because this entire group was basically summary executed.
Right.
So yeah, it was a well-crafted story. I was extremely happy with it.
What is the price point on that?
Those guys, I don't even remember what they go for. So many pounds, I think it is.
Oh, okay. Well,
I don't
more than
think
a quid.
I don't think it's actually, it is in pounds. Holy crap. That's awesome. I didn't even ever notice that. Yeah, £3.80.
£3.80. All right.
So, but yeah, so I mean, probably you're probably talking
Like $7.
$5 to $7 book, yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. Which, for a magazine, a solid 4 to 6 stories every time. That's not a bad deal.
No, and especially if it's actually a good read.
Yeah, yeah. Now, to be fair, because they pack so many stories in there, for example, there's the Dread storyline in there is like part something of 11 or something like that, but it's because each part is very quick. Time,
yeah.
Yeah, but it's well. The magazine comes out weekly. The program comes out weekly. So basically, once a week you're getting this, but it's more like on a old school Orphan Annie type situation or Green Hornet type thing, where it's like, you know, quick and to the point, gotta wait till next week. Quick and to the point, gotta wait till next week. You know, instead of, you know, a longer read, you know, with a lot of development.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
So I'm reminded of kind of the either the Marvel Comics Presents. You know, how they would, you know, kind of break up a story, and then you would have this section of this story, and then this section of that story, and they may be paced out differently, you know, whether it's a 3-issue or an 11 or whatever. But still, cool.
Yeah, no, it's something I've enjoyed for quite a while. I mean, this is program 2411. Like, my pride and joy, honestly, is my program too. So, my first appearance of Judge Dredd. So, it's something that I definitely, still to this day, am getting into, and I don't think that they've lost any edge along the way. They've done a real good job keeping it current with the storyline versus where we are in society. You know, basically, you know, trying to really give a forewarning of, you know, hey, this is what Mega City 1 ended up like under this type of situation, or, you know, this sect of this city, or, for example, they're outside the walls in this one.
Right.
So.
But you don't, well, and obviously, since it's a European publication or story, you know, it's not necessarily poking at our government per se, but it's just talking about if any government got to that point.
It's definitely got a lot of it's always been more based on a North American type feel than anything else.
Good. Where are the examples for the people?
Well, in some aspects, we really are. I mean, take a look at, you know, it's not Escape from London. It's Escape from New York and Escape from L.A., you know? So, and now, don't get me wrong, yeah, you can make the argument, well, they're United States movies. But at the same time, I mean, they make movies about overseas locations all the damn time. But out of all the cities in the world, what did we choose to escape? 2 of them in America. So...
USA.
Which, I mean, could be a causality argument, but whatever, you know.
Well, you know, and given the size of America, you know, at least you have somewhere to run to. If you escape London, you don't have as much leniency of where you go.
There's a weird amount of countryside around it. I mean...
but if you superimpose England over top of the U.S.
It's crazy. Yeah, it is nuts, man.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I guess when you're traveling in kilometers per hour, it does kind of affect your overall outlook versus, you know, speed through Texas at 90.
And still don't get to the end.
Yeah. I think it actually is 90 right now on their through interstates.
I honestly don't remember what it was when we went through.
I want to say it was like 80 or 85 last time I did.
To be fair, I read comics most of the way through Texas.
That's fair. Cruise control was probably set at 120. You didn't even know it.
Well, Sarah was driving because she can't read in the car and the battery life, you know.
Yeah.
So she drove and I read.
That's fair. So anyway, yep, that's what I did for the week. And it looks like you did...
I did Doom's Division. It is a tie-in to the One World Under Doom storyline.
Tiger Division spin-off type idea.
Okay, so Tiger Division was a Korean superhero team.
Yeah.
And their adventures. And honestly, I never read any Tiger Division before. The reason I picked this up was because when I read the synopsis for issue 2, they mentioned that Karma had joined the team.
Okay.
And since Karma is a mutant, and actually one of the ones that I really like from the New Mutants, I ended up picking up this because I knew it was going to lead into that.
Okay.
So she actually does appear in this issue. Where we are in the One World Under Doom storyline is that Doom has taken over the world, and basically it is the understanding that our governments can continue to govern so long as they adhere to Doom's wish, and so long as they don't contradict him, they're free to do what they want. But then Doom has dropped certain rules down. There is a truly universal healthcare system and open education for whoever wants it. And then in the most recent issue, number 2, he also dropped that people are free to cross boundaries. There's no hindrance because it's all considered Latveria now. Yeah. The world is Latveria. You just have, this province of Canada, this province of the U.S., so forth. But it's still Latveria. So, under that, they brought in Karma, Wave, and a third Pan-Asian country representative.
Yeah.
And so they're going for a United Eastern Asian task force with, a unified goal. And so, again, we're kind of laying out the fact that, Doom is in control, and now, all the countries are urged to work together because technically we are one country. Mm-hmm. That said, going into this, the only character I knew was Karma, and she didn't appear until about 2/3 of the way through the book.
Okay.
So, if you're new to this book, I have found that they were really good at using each person's code names and trying to display a little bit of their power, but there wasn't really like a synopsis page saying, okay, these are your characters, these are their powers.
Yeah.
And so I went in completely brand new to this.
Yeah.
Some of the interactions I thought at first was a little hokey, but then I got to thinking, and if I had replaced this character with Spider-Man and this character with Captain America and so forth, all of a sudden it didn't seem as hokey. So going into it and thinking, well, this is a bizarre character, honestly, we're used to it. We're just used to it coming from a very specific character each time.
Okay.
So it was a little hard to follow at first because I didn't know who anyone was, what their powers were, and it was really kind of hard to give a vague overall description. I couldn't just say, well, this person controls light. It seemed like everybody had multifaceted powers.
Yeah.
But that said, it is a government-sanctioned team with, specific missions that they go on. And one of the main characters of the team apparently is a pop star. And what?
Dazzler.
Kind of. But, so they had gone on this mission, and there is a film crew following them and reporting it, kind of cross between cops and like your film or your video directors for a music video. And then apparently there was a time delay, and then they synced it. They superimposed one of her songs over top of the fight sequence, and then they released it as kind of a news story / music video. And polling was going through the roof, and apparently the sales from that helped support the funding of the team. And it was just kind of like, there was kind of a bizarre synergy to it, but some of it kind of made sense.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting take. I liked a lot of their costume designs. Again, that said, there were
So
some
are
characters.
these basically the members of the Tiger Division initially? Then
Yeah.
with a couple add-ons.
Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly what it is. And anyway, then when they dropped off, the new team members, they said, well, this is actually a good point for us to change the name to Doom's Division. And so then it turns out that the overreaching storyline here is that Sunfire has gone back to kind of militant guerrilla warfare, and he's destroying factories to suit his purpose, but they haven't really explained what it is. But they said that he's rallying people against Doom, and that just can't be. So Doom's division is now being sent out to, pull in Sunfire and rein him in and capture him. So this issue, as kind of an introduction to people, it did all right. Again, you got everybody's name. It was really hard to...
And you'll see where it goes next one.
Right.
Next one, basically.
So it was interesting. I'm not sure if this would be something I would normally read if it wasn't for the mutant characters tied in. But that said, I had actually recently read an article about Alan Moore's view that, characters should be killed off after 20 years and to keep it fresh, and then that way, someone's, character doesn't get too convoluted or bogged down by continuity, keeps things fresh, and, invites new ideas versus dredging up the past. And going off of that concept, this would be an interesting team to see, okay, well, this character has this unique power that I haven't seen before, and this person had this giant head, apparently with some kind of totem. So, I mean, it was definitely a fresh idea and something I hadn't seen before. And typically I'm not big into trying things new, but it wasn't bad. It was just, it takes a little while to get used to something. And, if I read this long enough, who knows? The art was good. I liked the designs. They had a friendly banter about them. I can't guarantee that I would read this on a regular, ongoing basis.
Yeah.
But it's not bad for a little bit of a tie-in.
Right on. Okay.
So,
very cool.
With that point, I guess we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot else this week. It's kind of been a little slow.
A little slow.
So.
But we will have convention news coming out before too long.
Yeah. More to come on with the Diamond being bought by
Alliance.
Canadian company. So
wasn't Alliance the company that bought their
Alliance is the company that bought Alliance.
Oh, right.
But it's a Canadian overarching company that
Overlord.
Yeah. So we'll see how that ends up turning out, especially with the tariff thing.
Yes.
So,
with all the companies kind of fleeing away and finding a new home.
But yeah, we'll discuss that more in depth definitely next time.
Because it just happened, so there hasn't been
not a whole lot of news on it.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of news other than the fact that the diamond sale has now gone through.
Yeah. No, it hasn't gone through. It's been approved.
Approved.
Yep. So. But anyway,
all right. So from the Ark, it's Devin and Jeff, and we'll talk to you next week.